How's everybody doing?
Good. Thanks.
Awesome, awesome. So like Chris said, I'm Jim Richter. I'm the Strategic Account Manager with DonorDrive. I've been there about 7 years and worked with NAMI from the inception. So the last 3 years, I've been working with them and helping them with their data needs. So today we're gonna do a few things. We're gonna really talk about the majority of the time. We're gonna really talk about the value of data and how important it is to nonprofits. We're gonna talk through the steps of being more data informed, allowing your organization to understand goals, collecting the data, what to do with it, and just being overall more data informed and allowing you to help that with your decision making. We'll also allow you to kind of apply what you've learned with some real sample data from what we have up here. And then from there, we'll give you some next steps. We'll let you leave here with some tools and some ideas so that you can go back to your office on Monday and or Tuesday or whenever and actually be able to use this. And then we'll leave some time at the end for some Q&A. If for some reason this butts up against our time, I'll make sure you guys have my contact information so you can contact me directly and I can help at all, any way you need. So I want to start out with a little cartoon here. This is one of my favorites, and I'm sure, one, some of you guys have been in some meetings where you've thought this, or two, some of you have come in here thinking, I'll see what this is like, but I'm sure he's just going to throw out a bunch of numbers, and I'm going to leave here and not have any idea what to do with it. I understand that. That's not going to be what happens. We'll make sure that you guys leave here with some tools so that you are able to utilize that and apply it moving forward. So what's the value of data? I love this quote here. It's from a mathematician, and he's actually a science fiction novelist. You can have data without information, but you cannot have information without data. And I think that speaks to a lot of what we're going to talk about today. So this is a common analogy, and I'm sure some of you maybe have seen this, but I love it. So let's say, just to apply what we're doing here, tonight you walk out, you're going to dinner. You walk outside and you look up at the stars, okay? Each one of these stars represents a data set. It's something that's available to you based off of your perspective and what you see. Now, imagine that your husband, your wife, your kids, they go outside where they are. They're looking up at the same stars. They may be able to see some of the same things that you're seeing, but they're also going to see other things, and vice versa. It's all based on your perspective. Now, imagine you have a tool like a telescope, and you can really focus in on those stars and how much more you'll be able to see, much more insight and perspective you'll be able to see. So the key takeaway today that I want you guys to have is the value of what you have visibility to. So we're going to discuss how to use data and how to add value to the perspective in your decision making. So that's going to be kind of where we go from here. So why is data important? Data is important to a nonprofit because I understand there is a belief out there that data is this word that scares people. It sounds very cold, very dehumanizing, that you're basically downloading some numbers, giving it to a robot and letting them run with it. That could not be further from the truth. In reality, what data will help you do is data is going to help you build closer, warmer relationships with your constituents, with your fundraisers, and with your donors. So how will it do that? Well, it's going to allow you to make more evidence-based decisions. So you're not going to have to make opinion-based decisions. You're going to have facts that you can apply it to. Now, you also have a wide variety of fundraisers and constituents. Some need to be talked to differently. How you can use data is you can segment those fundraisers and talk to them the way they need to be coached. That's a really powerful thing. It's going to also increase your engagement. So you're going to be able to make your fundraisers and your donors better at what they do. You're going to be able to gain insight into the habits of your fundraisers, understanding what makes a successful fundraiser and where maybe your average fundraisers are falling a little short and how maybe a minor tweak can turn them into a great fundraiser. And last, you're going to be able to set realistic goals that are going to be very attainable. So we're going to talk now about the steps of becoming more data informed. The first step is really to define your goal. So it's important to have clarity around your goals that you're trying to achieve. So some of you may have very lofty multi-year goals, and others may have some short-term goals, and that's fine. But you need to be clear, because your data is going to be meaningless unless it's grounded with your organizational goal. You need to identify the right performance indicators. So really hone in on the data, examine and clearly measure your success so you can achieve your strategic goals. So develop baselines to measure it by. Understand where you're coming from so that you have a basis of comparison and you can know what's coming next. Once you do all that, then you're going to implement it. So this will help you work towards achieving your goals. And last is optimizing these results so that you can continually improve. We call this the fifth step. There's really no final step when you're pulling data and you're using data. You always are going to be continually learning and always continuing the process. So take what you learn and put it back into the process and grow from there. So what we're going to do here is we're going to break down each of those and we'll tell you a little bit about each area. We're also going to walk you through from start to finish an example walk and let you kind of see how to apply it. So defining your goals. Organizers really need to ask themselves three questions. They need to ask themselves, what are you hoping to accomplish? What is your strategic goal? And what objectives will drive that goal? Once you can answer those questions, then you can make some SMART goals moving forward. So what are SMART goals? SMART goals are, they're specific. The goal, you have a particular metric or area of performance. It's measurable, so it's quantifiable, so you will be able to measure it. It's not subjective. It's attainable. You're going to want to push for higher performance, but you need to be realistic. It's going to be relevant. So it relates to your overall mission and the objectives of your organization, and it's time-based, so there is an end to it. Now, with fundraising and fundraisers, these goals can fall into typically one of three buckets. You have your retention, which is your event growing participants, or are you losing participants every year? Revenue, same thing. Are you growing your revenue or are you decreasing in revenue? And last is activation, which is essentially, are your participants active fundraisers or are they not raising a thing and coming to your events, but not putting anything besides the bare minimum or even zero into the fundraising? So some SMART goals that would be around each of these buckets. For retention, increasing participant retention by 10% compared to last year by the end of your event season. Revenue, increase sponsorship revenue by 25% compared to last year by the end of event season. And activation, increasing team captain fundraising by 15% compared to last year by the end of the season. Now, we all understand that retention and activation will drive revenue, but revenue is its own bucket because there are some specific areas that call just for revenue increase. Now for our example walk, we're going to stick to this activation. This is going to be what we apply moving forward. So step 2 is identifying the right performance indicators. Once you have your goals set, organizations need to ask themselves two things. They need to ask themselves, all right, what bucket does the strategic goal fall into? And what metrics in that bucket will you use to measure your goal against? So what are KPIs or performance indicators and what are they not? These are ways to evaluate the success of your organization meeting your specific goal. It really will give you a way to evaluate, the successes and the failures, and give you an overall look at the health of your fundraising program. What they are is they're actionable, quantifiable. They're not vague or unclear. You can measure factors that are critical to the organization. They're not nice to know. So an example of this would be understanding the number of team captains that you have in an event versus a nice to know might be how many participants wear NAMI shirts the day of the walk. They're tied to your business goals and targets. So they're very customized reports. They're not generic reports that you can pull that are already put together for you. Now, this is an important one. You want to be very specific on the metrics that you're pulling. You don't want an exhaustive list of 50 or 100 metrics because that can get very overwhelming. So limit it to 4 to 8 metrics that you're going to track and work against that. And lastly, you're going to want to apply them consistently throughout your entire events, all your events, so they're not refutable in the end. Now, knowing that and knowing these buckets, can anybody give us some examples of what some KPIs might be that fall into each of these buckets?
Darcy, do you know any key performance indicators we might want to measure?
Sure. Like for retention, we like to look at the lapsed participant list to see who we need to go after and get back.
Good. All right, any others? Just throw them out there.
Revenue $0.
Good.
What's that?
Revenue, $0 fundraisers.
Making a self-donation. Self-donation.
Perfect. Self-donation. That would fall on the activation side. That's good. So we have one of each. Good. So let's actually look at some of these broken down. So your retention, your number of returning participants versus lapsed participants, finding your retention rate, the lifetime value of a participant. Looking at revenue, your percent of actual fundraisers, so exactly, your $0 fundraisers versus actual fundraisers. Team participation, average value per participant, how much they donate. And then activation, knowing when your participants are registering, if they're using email, are they self-donating? When are they telling their story on why they're walking for NAMI walks, customizing their page. Social media usage, participant role breakdown. So are they a team member, a team captain, or just an individual? Good. So for this, since we're following the sample event and the activation, we're gonna stick to these ones. Now, some of the other questions that you may want to ask yourselves are: is your participant base mobilized? Are they raising money or not? What percentage of event participants are team captains? Are you retaining them? What percent of revenue comes from team captains? And then a lot of these, what habits are your team captains doing? So knowing that, going into developing your baseline measures. So now that you want to understand where you're coming from. So essentially, you're providing the organization a way of comparing what might come next. So you might ask yourself, how is your organization performing against others like you? Or how did your organization perform last year? Or even the year before? What is the trend? The last, understanding, are there any anomalies with your performance that you need to account for? So say some of you had an event in the spring that you moved to the fall of the next year. Understanding all that so you can get a true comparison is essential. So how do you do that? You do that through benchmarking. This benchmarking will allow you to find untapped opportunities. So you can do it through benchmarking against other events or even against national averages of NAMI. There's publications out there that you can find what the national averages are, or you can utilize what we've already done for NAMI and actually benchmark it against their national averages. The other thing is to review your event data over the previous 3 years, if it's available. 3 years is good. So from there, let's apply these to actually our sample event. So knowing the sample event and going into activation, one thing I do want to say before we move forward, this is real data that you're going to see here. This is not made up. For the NAMI averages, these are their real averages. For the sample event, what we did is we took 4 walks from the spring of 2018 and took equal amounts from these 4 walks. So some of your top fundraisers, some of your average, and some of your $0 fundraisers, and combined them so that we could get a sample event. So knowing that, what if you could predict who would be your top fundraisers before they even knew it? It's possible. We can help you with that. So there is a lot of data out there that we've pulled over the years that you can see what specific trends people are doing and what habits and what actions they are completing that make them successful versus the actions that maybe average fundraisers are not. So let's look at this. So this is, like I said, actual NAMI example. So the participants that register 8 weeks or beyond the event start date raise 3 times more than those that register 7 weeks all the way up to event day. We also know those that use the email within DonorDrive raise 7 times more than those that don't. We can't account for the emails that are sent outside of DonorDrive. This is just data within DonorDrive. Those that make a self-donation and those that customize their fundraising page and tell their story raise 9 times more than those that don't. Those that connect to social media raise 4 times more, and the team captains raise 6 times more than any other participant. Yeah, absolutely.
So just for a fun NAMI Box example of how we use this kind of data to make data-informed decisions. So, Jim, they provide us with this information that people who register 8 weeks out or more raise 3 times more money. So we used to say within NAMI Walks, our guidelines were, hey, have your kickoff event 6 to 8 weeks out before your walk. Well, if you're not holding your kickoff event till 6 weeks before the walk, we're missing this. They should be registering 8 weeks before the walk if we want them to raise 3 times more money. So that's why you hear NAMI Walks walk managers, you hear us say now, have your kickoff event 8 to 10 weeks out so we can get those folks registered at least 8 weeks out. So that's using the data to make data-informed decisions and try to influence behavior that's going to help us raise more money. So that's exactly what we did with trying to change behaviors using the fabulous data we got from our partners.
Perfect. So knowing what we know here and going by our sample event, let's actually talk about what the average is. So this is the actual average of NAMI across all events and how much the participant raises when they accomplish this action. So somebody that registers 8 weeks before raises $220, and you can go down the line here. Now, what you're going to want to do is look at your walk and how your walk is compared. So looking at our sample walk, we can see how we are stacking up against all the NAMI walk to the national average. From that, we can look at the differences. So we do know that our sample walk is doing very well with their emails, telling their story and customizing their page, and connecting to social media. But the areas that they may need some help on are going to be, getting them to register earlier, making a self-donation, and really coaching those team captains to be better team captains. So now that we know this, what we're going to do is we're going to put this aside for a second, and we're going to look at our trends over the last 3 years for our sample walk. So we're going to look at this, and we're going to see how each year we're progressing, and then we can find the compound annual growth rate of all 3 walks and see what the percentages are, and see if there's any correlation between this and what the NAMI walks average slide before us showed us. So looking at this, it's showing basically identical. So we're trending downward in the register in 8 weeks before. Same thing with that self-donation, as well as team captains. So that tells me there's a real opportunity here.
Okay, the data shows us the opportunities and what we can do to help increase our fundraising, but it's also showing some things that the sample walk is doing really well. So can you, I don't want to, yeah, I don't want to mess up yours. I will want to go back maybe. And there. Okay, so, right. So you can see where, Maya's drawn to the negative red numbers, what do we need to improve upon? But also, look at where they're doing better than the national average. 10% greater in customizing the fundraising page and 14% greater in connecting to social media. So is that walk manager really training their team captains well in doing those things? Or they were training their participants well? So the data may be showing that. So you can use your data as well to see, like, all right, that's something we're doing well, and we can continue to message on those points.
And I'll add something to this. If you're looking at this, the areas that our sample walk is in the negative are actually areas that will be easier for you to coach and get them to adopt. So they're doing very well in areas that across the country people are not. So keep that in mind. So where are our opportunities? The opportunities, there's 3 of them. So there's an opportunity on putting a priority on earlier registration. So knowing that 8 weeks and beyond is when people fundraise the most and when they raise the most, when they have more time. So put a priority on that. Also get them to kickstart their fundraising. So have them, coach them in self-donating during registration. This is an important one. There's 2 reasons why I like this one and why it's important. So first is, when somebody goes onto a page to make a donation, almost all the time they're going to scroll to the bottom and they're going to see who's donated. Okay? If they see your name first, you're asking them to donate, your name is listed first, they're going to see the amount you donated and just how committed you are to the cause. It's going to make it that much easier for your friends and family to donate to your page, knowing that you're committed as well. And on the other side of it is, when somebody comes on the page and sees 0% fundraising on their thermometer, I can speak for myself. I don't want to be the first to donate to that, because I don't want my sister or my mom to come on and donate more than me and make me look bad. So that's another area to keep in mind. And last is coaching team captains. Really giving them the tools to be more successful is a big opportunity. So now we're going to jump into slide 4, or step 4. So implementing these decisions. So now that you have all the information, you have the baselines to measure it against, you've identified some trends and some opportunities. What do you do? How do you work towards your goal? So ask yourself, what have you learned so far? What might be some short-term goals that you can use to progress towards your overall goal? And when you're pulling these reports, how often do you want to pull them? So how are you going to go about implementing it? I put this one first because I think it's extremely important. Data visualization. You can go to your board, to your executive director, or even anybody in your organization and have the greatest trends in your data. But a lot of times if it's just numbers, it's not going to be that impactful. So make it very visual. Put some charts to it. Name your team captains. Name your team members. Really make it visual. Set short-term goals. So have milestones leading up to your main goals that you need to hit so you know you're working towards it. When you're deciding on your reporting frequency, think of it as like your 401k. If you're going to log into your online and look at your 401k every single day, it's not going to show you much of a change every day as it would if you're logging in, quarterly. So as you're getting more data decisions, I would say, 6 months, 8 months out, start pulling them maybe once a month. Then, in the 4-month range, start pulling them twice a month. When you get to the 8 to 6 weeks range, start pulling your reports weekly so you can see how they're doing. Also, once you have buy-in, hold your team accountable. Everybody has a specific role. Make sure that they're sticking to it. And same thing, stick to it. I know at first it may seem like it's hard and it's not making a difference, but if you work your plan and stick to it, it will come together. So what do we know? We're going to go back to applying it to our sample walk. So what do we know? With our goal, our activation goal is to increase team captain fundraising by 15% compared to last year by the end of the event season. So what do we know? We know that team captains raise 6 times more than any other participant based off of the average for NAMI. We also know that our sample walk is showing a negative 15% difference in team captain fundraising versus that same average. And we also know that we're trending down year after year by 4% in team captain fundraising. So what do we do? Where do we go from here? Well, let's actually visualize who our team captains are. All right, so we're going to visualize. So who are my team captains? So let's meet Lisa Leader. Lisa makes up 8% of your participants and 33% of our fundraising. She's registering 8 weeks before an event. She's fundraising on average $321 for the event through 5 gifts and $65 donated by herself. She's also recruiting 11 teammates, and those teammates along with Lisa are averaging $917 as a team. She's over 3/4 of the time hitting her goal of 100%, and we're retaining her 60% of the time. And when we do retain her, she's raising 3 times more than any brand new team captain that's coming on board. She's moving up to $460. We also know by her habits that she's not using email very often, and she's not connecting to social media very often, but she is making self-donations and telling her story. So looking at this, is there anything that you guys see that might be potential areas to improve? Just throw them out there.
The emails.
Emails and social media. Good. Anything else?
Telling stories.
Perfect. So here's what I see. These areas over here, you're right. So I would focus on trying to get her to register earlier. She right now is registering right at the bare minimum of the 8 weeks. If you could push that out to 10 weeks, 12 weeks, think of the impact that could have. I would also focus on retaining her because you're going to have to work 3 times as hard for every one you lose just to get new people in there and equal what your lost team captains are doing. And then I would also, just like you guys said, focus on teaching her the habits, why it's important to do these things. So some of the tactics that you could utilize would be, enhancing your coaching strategy. So don't just communicate with Lisa during the fundraising season. Get a year-round communication. Talk to her in the off season. Try to get her to volunteer. Get her committed year-round. Use a white glove treatment. So knowing that they are that important, they raise 3 times more than anybody else, focus your recruitment value on them. I would say, you could open up emails, set up a triggered email so that the second that you open up your registration, an email will go out to all past participants from the last year. Just ask them, hey, come back, register. We've opened up registration and we want our VIPs to come in and register first. Get them in the door as early as you can. So that falls into find the registration sweet spot. Try to open up your registration 5-6 months in advance and just get them registered as early as you can. Also, target captains with welcome series, and I know that NAMI is already doing this, but by targeting them and teaching them the importance of these emails, of connecting to social media, of making a self-donation, just telling them and teaching them how important that is. And the last, I'm sure all of you do it, but just remind them of their impact. Tell them how much you appreciate them and exactly the impact that they are having on your organization.
Yeah, Jim, I would say one thing we already do for NAMI Walks is we have multiple registration emails that go out to those lapsed participants for you, but they are generic. They're not personalized to your specific event, so that's something that you can do is personalize them to your event. And then and same with the welcome emails that go. We have emails that are scheduled to go to each of your participants for the first 4 days after they register that have specific actions that we're coaching them to do for you, but they have a national voice, and we think they're very well written. I think Darcy did a wonderful job on that. But you can personalize them a little bit to your local, and you can also put things in there about about your local event and things like that. So
Good. All right. So now optimizing it. Step 5. Find ways to continually improve. Like I said, there's really no end. You're always going to be learning, always be seeding back in what you learned to the process and continually improve. So ask yourself, what's the data telling you? Are you performing well against your goals? And can you do anything differently to improve? So looking at that and review, reevaluate, refine. I would say when you ask yourself these questions, the answers, it might start the process over. And I know that can be frustrating, but this is an important step because the discipline of being honest with yourself will help you be successful. So data is really only valuable to you when you act on it. It's just numbers. So it becomes much more powerful when it's integrated and applied and learned from. So the ultimate goal here is to really turn your data into insights, those insights into action, or those insights into strategy, and that strategy into action.